Evan drops his first mock draft on the show. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this WTSP Wednesday episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And, of course, you can follow on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. He is Evan Klosky at EKloskyWTSP. We are your credential members of the media covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I am the deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com. Evan is on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10tampabay.com. And you can catch the show every Monday through Friday along with the everydayers. And for that, I'd like to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, plus one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. The NFL draft is 8 days away. And I've done plenty of different mock drafts and situational mock drafts and forcing myself to take certain players or certain positions in certain rounds and used all different simulators. I've run the mock draft gamut. So now it's time for Evan to do one of these mock drafts here on the show to see how he thinks things will shake out. And let's start with how you are approaching this particular mock draft. Is this going to be a Evan Klosky's preferences for the Buccaneers? Is this going to be Evan Klosky putting himself in the brain of Jason Light and doing what he would do? Are you going to be doing any trades? Kind of what's your angle on this particular mock?
No trades in this mock. I'll just say that generally speaking, I'm not opposed to the Buccaneers slightly trading down or slightly trading up in this draft. For me, I think the only way you trade up is if Latu is there kind of in the 20s and you just got to, like, to me, I think he's the one you're circling, you're starring. If he sneaks down far enough, you might use that extra third-round pick you have this year. Or maybe you actually just trade next year's third-round pick or something like that. See what happens. But that would be my scenario of going up. Going down slightly, gaining another early day 3 pick, maybe another third rounder. That would interest me a lot because Jason Light even mentioned it in this press conference. They have a lot of needs. They're not pressing needs. A lot of it is depth. He mentioned the year they won the Super Bowl, the year that they were dominant and ended up losing to the Rams because they got injured towards the end. What do those two teams have in common? Really deep teams. So I think with these selections, he can build that depth and kind of fill some holes while also helping this roster move a little bit more into the future and shaping it the way that it has to be. So that's just my blanket statement. But as far as the draft simulator is concerned, which is how I did my mock draft, because I didn't really want to build out all the picks. I just rather kind of use something random, shoot out the picks at me, and then we can kind of go from there. I think there's a little less bias involved in that. So that's kind of how I attacked it. Just the trades are a variable that I think dealing with the computer, we start going into fantasy land a little bit too much.
Yeah, it does make it a little tough, but let's go ahead and dive into it. Evan, who do you have the Bucs taking on night one in round one at pick number 26?
So when I dialed up the simulator, Latu was already gone. It really came down to, I'll say this, Jackson Powers Johnson was staring me right in the face. And I swore I was going to take him. Then I said to myself, I don't necessarily love too many edge guys after a couple of the big names. I mean, Chop Robinson was also available to me if I wanted him. But I actually went with Johnny Newton, a little biased pick for yourself. Thinking that if we can add, I'm speaking in terms of me sitting in the Jason Light chair. That's why I say that. If we can add Kalijah Cansey, Vita Vea, Johnny Newton as my 1, 2, and 3, that means even when I have to pull Vea or Cansey off the field, I am still creating quite the internal rush, which means that I haven't necessarily improved my edges, which is a problem, but I have now helped them out more on more snaps because I'm continually firing at defenses, firing at offenses on all snaps from the interior, which is going to drive more bodies to the middle, which means that I should open up things for JTS, Anthony Nelson, Yaya Diaby, Randy Gregory, so it's a way of like, I didn't fix the problem, but I did help alleviate the issue, I think, on more downs. And now you've just made Gaines and Golston kind of your 4 and 5s, which is a pretty like stout group there. And I can now use Gaines and Golston on more like obvious rushing down linemen and really start trying to like cycle Vea, Cansey, Newton to just get after the quarterback and start working through the interior. So it was a tough call. I love Jackson Powers Johnson and would not blame it. Would not blame Jason Light and company for going that route. I just tend to believe that this draft is very strong on the interior. And I don't know if I think I can get a pretty good talent later on from the interior. I don't know if I can get a guy like Newton, who, by the way, is a local product. So you got that going for you too.
Yeah, and that's honestly something that I've talked about a couple of times over the course of the last few weeks where, if Jer'Zhan Newton, Johnny Newton is sitting there, that's a really smart pick for the Buccaneers because of exactly what you said. And now you're at a point where it's like, all right, well, are you going to double team Vita Vea because now Cansey and Newton have one-on-ones and your edge guys have one-on-ones. Somebody's winning a battle there. You're going to double Cansey. Well, now Vea's opening a lane in the interior. You're going to have Winfield or Britt or Servassier Dennis or Levante David or somebody coming through that gap. It creates a lot of problems when you have a trio like Newton, Vea, and Cansey at the forefront, and then you're bringing a rotation of edge guys. And again, you listed them all off. Those are guys they can constantly rotate. Nobody has emerged as the alpha yet. We're all hoping that Yaya Diaby takes that step and he's that alpha. But these are guys that pretty much all bring the same thing, and you can keep them all fresh throughout by continuously rotating all of them. So no, I love the pick of Johnny Newton there, as you knew that I would. But that's just the first pick. There are plenty more to go through, and we're going to take a look at day 2. That is coming up next here on the Locked On Bucs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even with those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. It's Locked On's NFL Mock Draft live on April 17th at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, streaming on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on April 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft, April 17th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, streaming live on Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. I kind of wish at this point I had set up a camera to record myself going through this Locked On Mock Draft, because Locked On Bucs viewers would have seen me come unhinged when I had quite a few trades that were agreed to ahead of time, and then I was ghosted during the draft. Was very upset. And I knew that a friend that I thought was about to turn foe was going to jump in front of me and take my guy. But it all worked out. I think Bucs fans are going to be happy for the most part with who I took, but you got to check that out. It's tonight. If you're watching this, on Wednesday, it's tonight at 7 p.m. Check it out. All right. You took Johnny Newton at 26 out of the University of Illinois. What do you have the Bucs doing at 57 with their second pick?
A lot of options here, but in my head, I really do pencil in the Buccaneers going wide receiver in the second round. I think the talent is super strong as far as like round 1 through 3 grades. And I'm staying fairly local once again. Only this time the local is more college related, as I'm going to Florida for wide receiver Ricky Pearsall. Watching him all year at Florida, his hands are phenomenal. I think that his footwork is phenomenal. I think that he can play the slot. And I know that Liam Cohen wants to bring Chris Godwin back in there, but you also do need kind of a succession plan of what's going to happen when Chris is potentially not here after the season. I don't know if the wide receiving crop is as good next year as it is this year. So this is a help me now and later pick. I don't necessarily know if Ricky's going to see a ton of playing time out of the gates, but I guarantee you can find a role for him for a few plays. And if Chris were to go down, he is a heck of a backup option, because I don't know if anyone can really play that slot position behind Chris if he is going to move over there. Like, it's not really where I want to see Trey Palmer. It's not really where I want to see Devin Tompkins. Rakim Jarrett, I liked what I saw. I need to see a little bit more this year again. So that's my pick is Ricky Pearsall. I'm very high on him.
Yeah, there are going to be a couple of listeners that have asked me to talk about Pearsall on the show. I haven't gotten to it yet. I have it planned for later this week, where I'm going to talk about some more of these wide receivers because of exactly what you're talking about. And I had a whole episode about it. Like, what do you do if Chris Godwin moves on. And so I like the addressing of the position. I'm not sure I would have done the same because now you're in a position you have two more picks on day 2 here, 89 and 92. There hasn't been an addressing of the edge rusher, but indirectly you did. We will say that Newton helps the pass rush for sure, but there's still hasn't been a selection along the offensive line. So I'm a little curious to see what you're going to do here at 89 and 92, and if there's going to be a viable option for you there, or if they're just going to roll with Opeta or Bredesen as the starting offensive lineman. So 2 picks within 4 selections of the draft coming up here at 89 and 92. So what do you have the Bucs doing?
Yeah, I mean, and these can flip flop around, right? I mean, I ultimately took at 89 Ray Davis, running back out of Kentucky. Love the fact that he brings continuity with the Liam Cohen system. Mm-hmm. Besides the fact of liking the player, I think it is necessary for Rachaad White to get a little bit more help. Not that Rachaad White should not have a huge impact in the offense. He still is your RB1. He's still going to play a bunch. But it's really hard to imagine that he can handle the workload consistently like he got last year. You want to get the best out of him, and that's a tall order to ask him to play as many snaps as he did. So you bring in Ray Davis. He will push Sean Tucker in camp because you know that Chase Edmonds is going to be there. And he's really kind of a change of pace, good veteran presence, someone who should get, handful of snaps here or there. But Ray Davis, I think, provides a little bit more of an explosive element. And, again, the continuity with Liam Cohen, I think, is really an X factor to bring in, knowing that you don't have to, you're a rookie, and to just kind of know how things are going. I think that's pretty good. So that's my 89. And now to get to your 92, I'm going with the Jason Light special, heading to the FCS with the South Dakota State Jackrabbits and Mason McCormick, inside offensive lineman. We know that Jason likes to search in the dark and crusty corners for his offensive linemen. I can see him pulling the trigger in the first round for Jackson Powers Johnson, but you want a long-term option there on the interior. I think he'll push for that other guard position, opposite of Malk. And now you have the Dakota marker rivalry on opposite sides of the line between a North Dakota State product and a South Dakota State product, and you throw them in at guard. And I'm still willing to go into next season with Robert Hainsey being my center if that's necessary. So I kind of want to attack that guard position, see if I can improve there.
Yeah, it's so tough to find those guys on day 2. And you're right. Jason Light has done a great job of finding starting offensive linemen on day 2 of the draft. You had Ali Marpet, you had Donovan Smith. For all his faults, he had a really solid 2-year run there. When the Bucs looked like they could have gone back-to-back Super Bowl champions. You have Cody Malk, you have Robert Hainsey. These are starters now in the NFL. And I personally probably would have tried to go offensive line sooner, but I still like the way that this draft is kind of shaping up. I mean, spoiler alert for the SB Nation mock draft, I ended up taking Graham Barton at 26 because he felt to me the edge rushers were gone, and I was trying to decide between Barton, Nate Wiggins, and Kool-Aid McKinstry, and I'm like, you know what, Barton's a plug-and-play starter, but I can see the Bucs waiting until day 2, and to kind of circle back to the Ray Davis pick, all of the listeners and viewers know how much I would love the Bucs to draft Audric Estime out of Notre Dame, but I've talked about Ray Davis quite a bit on this show. I like him a lot, and you're right, you cannot overstate how important relationships are, in the relationship that Ray Davis and Liam Cohen formed last year. I mean, Ray Davis had more rushing yards last year, or maybe it was more all-purpose yards with Kentucky than he did his first 3 years
Yeah.
of college football
Yep.
combined.
Mm-hmm.
He had more all-purpose touchdowns for Kentucky last year than his first 3 years combined. Like, something unlocked in Ray Davis with Liam Cohen there. Now, one of the knocks is I think he is one of the, if not the oldest running back in the class. I think might be the kid out of Memphis is just a hair old, like a month older.
Well, remember, you got Rashad White there. So it's not the
True.
thing is, you're not drafting him to be your RB1. You're drafting him to get inserted in there right away if necessary, if there's an injury. He's more mature. That's fine. But he is there as depth. So, again, the key to this draft, I think they have a couple of needs. And as I said, when I had to kind of adjust on the fly and say, I don't really love the edges so much and I don't want to press, but I think drafting Newton finds a way to attack the weakness while not directly attacking the weakness. I think this is purely like, hey, you're not going to be taking in as many bullets in the trenches this upcoming season. So you are going to spread out his years a little bit.
All right, 3 more picks for Evan coming up here for day 3. That is next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. I've been told I'm a competitive person. There are plenty of people that will attest to that statement. So yeah, I have a little bit of a competitive side, but we all do. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. The best part is messing with my friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties just like Monopoly, but now I can also rob their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. And I'm telling you, I will not rest until I sit atop that leaderboard. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. Wrapping things up here on a WTSP Wednesday episode of Locked On Bucs. Evan Klosky going through his mock draft for the Buccaneers. So let's talk about your day 3 haul. Who did you go for at pick 125 there in the 4th round?
Going through it right now. Cedric Gray, the linebacker out of North Carolina, originally a wide receiver, I believe. Switched over to linebacker, raw, athletic. To me, a guy that in this spot, you want to take a little bit of a higher ceiling, right? Like he's a little bit more of a project. I am very interested in bringing someone of his athleticism into this team and seeing what happens. It could be nothing. It could be something huge, but I'm willing to buy a little bit on the athleticism. And so that I didn't really necessarily love who was out there at 125, but that's kind of where I landed on that front.
Yeah, well, and he had a really, really good year for North Carolina in 2022. Played 2 fewer games in 2023. His numbers kind of dipped a little bit, so you would hope that he can kind of bounce back and get that resurgence. But one of the things that's really impressive about him that'll come in handy in Todd Bowles' system is that he's actually a really solid he's really solid in pass coverage. So that's something that, how can I put it nicely? The Bucs lacked a little bit with Devin White when he had to drop in coverage.
Yeah.
So, you have the opportunity there. Like you said, this is a high ceiling guy and very athletic. He would, as a 4th round pick, you would see him contributing on special teams not putting the pressure on him to start right away, but this is a guy that could compete for some playing time, and maybe in a KJ Britt kind of way from last year, we could see him emerge as a really strong contributor, a potential starter towards the end of the year. You have a long wait now. You have 95 picks until you get to pick again, going from 125 to the Bucs compensatory pick that they got in the 6th round there at pick 220. So who'd you land on there?
There I took Josh Proctor, safety out of Ohio State, another guy who I think can be on special teams, a guy who showed growth at his time at Ohio State consistently. Obviously, with Whitehead and Antoine Winfield Jr., he's not really looking to step in, but safety is a position where there isn't much depth there. Throw him into kind of that mixer of what you got with, Izzian and Dean McCollum. Throw him into that hopper, but ultimately, he is going to be there to be a special teams guy and add a little bit of depth in the secondary, and that's really kind of how these back half of the drafts tend to work for Jason Light. He tends to focus in on special teams and some depth positions.
Yeah, and I can't even give you grief for taking an Ohio State guy. This is a guy that I've looked at a couple of times in some of the mock drafts that I've done. If he falls to 220, I mean, I think that's incredible value. And again, these 6th, 7th round picks, you are looking for contributors on special teams, guys that you can develop and grow and be able to become contributors on whichever side of the football they're supposed to play on. But it's something that I've stressed a lot, and I'm curious your opinion of it before we get to your final pick here, is when I've looked for these special teams guys like Proctor, like Gray, it's so vital for the Bucs to find those guys, if they're not already on the team, because of the new kickoff rules. Now, all of a sudden, you have to have these guys that are so much faster and so much better tacklers to be able to minimize any return that the opposing team has, because I've said how excited I am for this new kickoff rule, because I think it can be an explosive play at any moment and can really flip a game on its head. But as a team trying to take advantage of that, but also limit another team's ability to take advantage of that, those guys are vital. And so Proctor is a guy that I've looked at a couple of times. He is really, really solid at tackling, which is nice to see in a young safety. And then, if he's able to start to get into the rotation and get on the field a little bit more, Todd Bowles finds a role for him. Really good at run defense, pretty good in terms of coverage. So I do really like that pick for some depth there at safety, where the Bucs have virtually none. But you have one more pick here in the 7th round. This is dart throw mode. Sometimes you get a Brock Purdy. Sometimes you get somebody that we can't even talk about because they didn't pan out and didn't last and aren't in the league anymore because they were a 7th round pick. So where are you going?
I don't really know where to take this pick. I've mentioned him before. I'm gonna take tight end of Washington, Devin Culp. We need another tight end. Mm-hmm. Cade Otton cannot be playing 95% of snaps. And I think Devin is somebody who had a great combine, athletic, somebody who can block. And I think that's really what you're looking for. Cade's a pretty good pass catcher for someone his size. He's also a pretty good blocker. But when he needs a breather, I need someone who's going to also just mostly block. And he can catch a ball here or there. It's not like he can't. But as I said, I mean, don't worry about the name so much. Really, in that 7th round, it's so up for grabs. I'm looking for a tight end. I'm looking for a cornerback. I'm looking for an edge guy. Anywhere, you can even go another kick returner, a specialist for the reasons you mentioned. that's really what it comes down to. So I do think there's a little bit of a need to bolster the tight end. I mean, like, all these seventh rounders are also guys who don't need to be drafted, and then you can invite them into camp and you might be able to work those routes. It's just, this is where this is where if you fall in love with a player, and which is impossible to know what Jason Light and his scouts are thinking towards the end of that draft, of like, this is the guy we need to protect from everybody else. So that's really what it comes down to. So that's my name. Am I, necessarily sold on it? Not so much. It's more of the, focus on the positions, and they do need a tight end. So I would like to see them add to that, because that's certainly a position they did not attack in free agency at all. And they didn't bring in a tight end. They didn't bring in a wide receiver. To me, it's, again, this is what I would have done in the draft, but to me that signals they are going to address those positions.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's do a quick recap here. In the first round, you took Jer'Zhan, Johnny Newton, the defensive lineman. Then in the second round, wide receiver Ricky Pearsall. Third round, you get running back Ray Davis and interior offensive lineman Mason McCormick. Then on day 3, in the fourth round, you get Cedric Gray, the linebacker. Sixth round, Josh Proctor, the safety. And then with the last pick, Devin Culp, the tight end. To me, looking at this, you got a starter in the first round. You got a starter in the second round, because Pearsall's probably going to be the wide receiver 3, but playing outside opposite Mike Evans. So you got a guy that's going to get a lot of offensive snaps. We won't say he's a starter. He's getting a ton of snaps, though. You're getting a rotational player in a running back that is going to have valuable time on the field. You're getting a starter in the interior offensive line. Then you got special teams contributor, and then a dart throw. Maybe it'll pan out, maybe it won't. You're going to try to help out that room a little bit and see if they can avoid having K. Dotton take 97% of offensive snaps this upcoming year.
And it's a UW and UW. They play together in Washington, so there's continuity there. But again, Devin's on the older side, so there are pros and cons with that. You got a guy with a lot of experience and snaps taken. Opposite side, a lot of wear and tear. So,
yeah, no doubt about it. Well, let us know what you think of Evan's mock draft in the YouTube comments, or you can tweet to us at Locked On Bucs, at Jarko_Bucs, at eCloskey WTSP. Let him know what you think. I give it a solid A-, B+. I like it. And
it's not your draft that you showed me, but
yeah. Well, and the viewers of YouTube and the listeners got to hear about that one on Monday. I don't think I can ever do that again. I got real lucky with the way that one fell, but that was, and you got your Ohio State guy in that one too. When I took
Steel Chambers.
Steel Chambers. What a name!
It's a great name.
An absolute stud.
It's a great name. You got to draft a name like that.
Absolutely. All right, we are going to get out of here. Please check out everything going on over at BucsNation.com and on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10TampaBay.com. Follow on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at Jarko_Bucs, at eCloskey WTSP. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Join subtext.com/Locked On Bucs, and make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you.